And when this first went down, well,
middle March.
Yeah, it was kind of the beginning of March, kind of the end of the first week in March. Chuck Carr reached out and said, obviously we're heading towards a shift, and the quarterly stats are really not going to show that. We could talk about the way things were, but we all know that's not really helpful. And so Chuck said, if it's okay with you guys, I'm not going to do the quarterly stats. However, I am going to continue to do the monthly MMO reports because I think those are going to be a lot more valuable to you guys right now. And he's also providing us with some weekly graphs, charts and graphs. To be honest, we're not going to really go over the weekly as much. Well, we're not going to go over that today. I think that the MMO report is incredibly important for all of us, if we haven't gotten familiar with this document before, to get familiar with it now.
Can we talk quickly about the weekly report?
Yeah.
If I'm you guys, I don't even want to wait weekly. I want to know every single day. And something at the Peters Company that we found that's been really helpful, and Christina on our team has been providing it for us every single day, is if you go to FMLS's first screen, and I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but if you go to that first screen, you can actually do a hot sheet super quick by pressing one button. It will show you the active pendings and sold per day, and you can pull the past 7 days. So that's something that we really need to be communicating with our database. So I wouldn't necessarily wait for this every single month. Know your market and follow it every single day, and that tool is there, and it's super quick and super easy to do. And then once a week, I would share that tool with everyone in your database, because you want to share good news.
Well, and you're the economist of choice, right? So I wanted to share with you really quick my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. So we've been talking for the last couple of months about flattening the curve. What does flattening the curve mean?
Well, it originally was coined to flatten the number of, reduce the number of cases so that hospitals, et cetera, were not overwhelmed and having to determine who they could treat and who they could not. That's
right. It was to stop the gross amount of new infections and potentially deaths from getting worse and spiking, right? And what we know about the coronavirus right now, especially from looking at statistics, is the coronavirus has kind of flattened the curve on the real estate market. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If we typically think of the real estate market, make sure I got my right tool here.
Andy's super techie today.
If we typically think about the real estate market like this, and here's first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, right? A lot of times we set business goals and we say, all right, first quarter is going to be about 20% of my business. Second quarter is going to be about 30. Third quarter is going to be about 30, and fourth quarter is going to be about 20. You guys have seen that example before, I'm sure.
And that's how we business plan actually at the Peters Company every year. We know first and fourth are going to be a little bit less than second and third, and we have to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, and if we're really honest about that, I mean, this is just a concept, right? But if we got technical about it, it probably looks more like 15%, 35%, 25%, 25%, right? But I mean, we could argue all day over that. So what I think is happening right now, is that the market is kind of doing this. And instead of us looking at a 20, 30, 30, 20, I think what we're looking at here is more like a 24, 26, 26, 24. You'll see this show up in the statistics, and this is the first month that we've actually seen COVID provide us with any meaningful data. But what I would say about this is that COVID is eliminating seasonality from the market. Whereas normally we would, as Leslie said, make hay while the sun's shining here in the second and third quarter. We're actually kind of creating a year of winter, a year at best case fall. And where I would take you with this analogy is, let's think back at, say the end of the fourth quarter, or even the middle of the fourth quarter, the beginning of the first quarter. How are we preparing for that seasonality? What are we doing?
Doubling efforts.
Yeah, you're doubling your efforts. What else are you doing?
I think we're becoming much more proficient with our technology.
Yeah. So you're always building something, right? You're either building production or you're building systems. So a lot of people in the fourth quarter, they're business planning, right? They're using that time to work on their business. They're in most cases changing messaging, right? You always see all the data or all the training that comes out that says, now's a great time to list your house, right? It's even though it's the holidays, there's still benefits to selling your house, right? You educate your consumer base.
I think of us every November, we plan a mailer that is like 11 reasons to sell your home during the holidays. And why do we do that? Because nobody wants to sell their home during the holidays unless they absolutely have to. And that's kind of what we're doing right now, right? We're saying 11 reasons to sell your home during COVID.
Yeah. Well, you're also setting up business for a future date, right? Yes, we want people to list right now. And if people aren't comfortable listing right now, we're teeing those babies up for the future, right? We're just building the pipeline so that when that client is comfortable, when it meets their timing and their needs, you're ready to roll. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, that's why pipelines are so crucial. So can we talk about pipelines for just a second? And we've never really talked about pipelines, I don't think, with stats before. Yet every single day, we as real estate agents should be working on our pipelines. So on our buyer and listing teams, every buyer's agent, every listing agent has a pipeline. And what that pipeline looks like is clients need to buy or sell right now. Nothing is stopping them. Like, they are ready to go, right? Those buyers are buyers that are in your car looking for their home. Those sellers are ones that you are putting on the market this month, right? Then let's talk about Bs. And everybody right now has to have a pipeline, okay? We got to get really clear on our pipelines. Bs is one thing standing in their way. So for a buyer, it may be, I need my refund check from the government to have my down payment, and then I'll be ready to go. It could be, I need my house to sell before I'm ready to buy. Right. For a seller, it could be something that they're waiting on. They may need to have that baby, right, before they put the house on the market. But a B is just, there's one thing standing in their way. C, buyers or sellers, there's two things standing in their way. Typically, these are people that are 6 months plus out, okay? 6 months out. And you want to make sure that your pipeline, guys, can you draw it? Looks like a funnel. So this is awesome. I love that Andy has this tool. So your pipeline, guys, should always look like a martini glass or a funnel, whichever you want to call it. Anybody drinking martinis during this time? So your C should have the very most. In fact, for our buyer team and our listing team, like, that's where they have the most. So a lot of our buyers agents right now have 20 to 30 buyers in this C pipeline. Your B is going to be about half of your C, okay? So for our buyers agents, they're probably going to have 10 to 15 Bs, or they should. And then your A's are half of that, because if you think about it, can you really work with more than 5 to 10 buyers at a time? Not really, right? So this is going to be the people that are active in your car right now. So that's going to be like 5 at the most 10. So that's why we look at this martini or funnel, and then they're going to slowly pop out. Well, the Peters Company, since March 15th, has put 48 homes under contract. Guys, that's 48 homes in 52 days. And I don't say that to brag. I say that only to tell you is that we were so focused on our pipeline in the fourth quarter and the first quarter that they were popping out despite COVID. So having this martini glass is crucial in your business. So right now, I want you to think when you're lead generating and you're doubling down on your efforts, if someone says, hey, I'm not ready to go until after COVID, where should they go? Where should they go in the pipeline? B, because one thing is standing in their way, okay? One thing. And to figure out, and Gene Rivers talked about this week, and I thought this was so helpful. He said, you can't stop when people say, I'm just going to wait till COVID ends. You have to say, tell me more about that. Because COVID ending is probably not going to happen anytime soon. So what does that mean to you, Andy?
Well, I think the point of it is that you gotta nail people down on a potential date. And it doesn't mean it's written in stone, but you got to find out the when, WHEN, for everybody in the database.
Yeah. And so if you just say, well, when COVID ends, you got to go deeper. So what does that look like to you? When quarantine ends, or when you feel more stable in your job, right? And we've got to really hone in on the reason why and build out this pipeline right now.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
So the one thing that we got to watch right now is going back to work is a privilege. And there are, dozens of states that would love to be able to go back to work in the way, even in the guarded way that we're able to go back to work. However, if we don't listen, if we don't practice social distancing, we are going to continue to be the laughing stock of the nation. And by we, I mean Georgia. So there's a little bit of risk with what we're doing, and this is not a political statement, but we've got to do our part. And that means you've got to adapt to doing business in this new way. We've been talking about that for 60 days. But don't just think, hey, all right, we're out of shelter in place, we can go back to quote unquote normal. Because I don't know that we'll ever go back to normal. I think that some of the things that we've learned and the ways that we've done business and the way that the consumer wants us to do business, because remember, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think. It's all about what the consumer thinks. I think we're going to have to be adaptable. So, all right, I'll stop sharing my screen. We'll get back to stats.
While we get back to stats, can I just point out that Michelle Rios' screen's really awesome. Her background, everybody should look at it. It's pretty cool. I don't have a green screen on my computer, and I'm really jealous because I can't do that. Oh, Stanley Codwell has one. There's some cool green screens going on.
Yeah, baby. Come on. It takes 5 minutes to put it together.
We have one that we put together, and my computer's so old that it doesn't work. But I love yours, Michelle.
All right. I'm going to get off of this. I don't think I need to be in this meeting anymore.
By the way, guys, if you downloaded these, the MMO for this month to write on during this call, this is towards the back. And the reason we're starting here is because.
Well, I just wanted you to get some perspective on where we are. If we looked at April in a vacuum, which we're about to do, I'm going to go back to the top, so don't freak out. I'll go to slide 1 after this one. But I wanted you to be able to see kind of the breadth of the last 6 months and what this looks like compared to, really relative to what I was talking about earlier on flattening the curve. Take a look at these active numbers from November through April. Normally, right, we would start seeing listings severely ramp up in February, certainly by March, and April should be April should be slaying it, right? May generally is one of the best months for real estate closings of the year, and we're just not seeing that. The curve is flattening.
And what I find really interesting about this, and I don't know the reasoning behind it, yet I think we may have been even experiencing a teeny shift in January, because typically I don't think we see January closings, January actives less than December actives, because we all have those clients that say, I'm going to put my house on January when the new year comes, and look what happened. Like, it was about 450 less actives in January than December, and then it decreased again in February, and this is pre-COVID, guys. So whereas we typically should have been kind of trending up, we were already trending down before March even hit.
Yeah, it's a mixed message for sure. I put red on that, even though we went up from April to May in actives, because it should be going up a lot more than that, right? Pending, and we'll take a look at what April 2020 looks like compared to April 2019, right? We'll look at those trends as well. Look at the pending rate is going down, 36.2%. I'm not incredibly concerned with that. I don't know if you guys are experiencing this, but just about everything new that we put on the market goes quickly. In fact, there was a stretch right after shelter in place where literally everything we sold was selling in like 2 to 3 days.
13 out of 14 properties we listed from March 16th through the end of the month went multiple offers for 102% on average of their sales to list price. I mean, it was pretty significant. And if you're not experiencing that right now, then we need to really hone in on our pricing. Because if you're pricing properties, there is demand.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here on the green, when we look at supply in months, median original sales price, I think we might actually be seeing the top. I believe that we can only guess that the original list price, the median original list price, probably going to go down. And 300,000 is the highest that we'd ever seen that. We'll see some of the, kind of gyrations going on inventory in a second as well. But I think that might be what the best looks like. Median percent to original list price at 97.6. That's smoking.
Yeah, let's look at that percentage failed though. You guys look at that line where in November, you see that 33% of all listings failed. Guys, we've been watching that trend line for quite some time. And if we look back over the last few years, it hovers typically, if you look every year, around 33%. Well, look what happened in April. Only 28.7% failed. And why? Well, why is because of two reasons. We've had so many sellers just trying to sell because they felt like the market was good and they were trying their price. Well, the triers are gone, okay? The only people in this market right now are actually the people that have to buy or have to sell. So you've got your sellers who are serious about selling, and you've got your buyers. They're no looky-loos anymore, right? There's no one out just looking to look and wasting your time. Like, there's serious people in the market. So when we actually get a deal under contract, what are we finding? That the seller and the buyer are going to hold it together. And what's really interesting, in the beginning of all this, we always look on our team for a 20% failure rate.
We business plan around 25.
We business plan around 25%. So we know of all the agreements we put under contract, about 25% could fall out, right? Well, we typically hover around 20%, which is good. And Andy and I are always pretty pleased with it. Well, what's interesting is when COVID started happening, guys, we thought that the fallout rate could be as high as 30%.
Well, I was business planning around 40% with the market centers.
So the market centers were thinking it was going to be 40. Andy and I on the team are saying, okay, we're going to prepare for a 30% fallout. And I'll be darned, like, we were tracking like week to week anywhere from 15% to 19% fallout. So it was actually less. And I think this is important to understand is if you can find buyers and sellers right now, it's amazing because they have to buy. and your fallout rate should actually be less, and you should be able to work more deals out.
So you business plan around the worst case scenario, right? And then you think like, how do I improve upon that worst case scenario? So I actually asked the question of the team. I said, all right, we're preparing for a significant amount of fallout. However, what would it look like to make that 10%? What would we have to do? What would our actions have to be in order to hold deals together? Well, that means that however we were communicating with a client before, we're gonna have to double our efforts, right? We can't just assume once we go under contract or make it through a due diligence period that we're smooth sailing. We get through contingencies, we're smooth sailing, because we still have people that could be losing jobs, right? There's still people with cold feet. There's people that would be totally fine with walking away from $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in earnest money because they don't have any, assurances about the future. So we had to be increasing communication and reassuring those people that they were making the right decisions, and that the property that they were selling or the home that they were buying was, meeting their goal. And we had to continually remind them of that, and it impacted it severely, right? So let's go up to.
Let's look at their chat box really quick, just to make sure before we move away from this, guys. We're gonna try to. It's really hard when you're reading chats and leading it, but we're gonna try to do this. Okay.
Hey, Leslie and Andy, one of the properties that I have under contract, you had mentioned that, serious buyers are looking because they have to buy and sellers have to sell. 3 of the buyers that made offers on this property, they have been looking for over a year and have been extremely disappointed because their offers have not won out. And that's literally how long they've been looking.
Wow. So thank you for sharing that, Andrea. I'm just looking at one question, and we should have said this in the beginning, and I apologize, especially for newer agents that haven't been with us for previous statistics presentations. The data that you're looking at represents 41 areas within our multiple listing service. So we're basically looking at a broad view of Metro Atlanta. You guys can get all the detailed searches you want. If you click on the MMO, you can actually look at just your specific area.
We'll get to that slide here in a second as well, so where you can drill it down a little bit. Lordana, if you're still on, or if one of the other team leaders is on, if y'all want to just watch the chat and then just let us know if there's a question we need to answer.
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Thank you both.
All right, so here's the first page. This is the one that we generally look at most of the time. And what I would point out with this, I highlighted in green the bottom number, because if we were looking at this in a vacuum, and I realize nothing is in a vacuum, right? But if we were looking at this in a vacuum and we said houses are selling in 40 days on the market for 97.6% of their original list price, 36% of homes are going under contract. We have, 1.2% of distressed property. Less than a third of the homes are failing to sell. I mean, if we looked at this in a vacuum, we would all say, wow, that is an amazing, amazing month. So it's kind of like interest rates right now, right? When we see interest rates go up like 0.25%, and like hit mid 3s, I think everybody has like an out of body experience, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. It's still pretty good, y'all. We know that there's some uncertainty ahead. However, if you've got sellers right now and they're trying to time the market, I don't know how many more chances they're going to get to capitalize on what's going on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We look at the sweet spot. The sweet spot's still in between that 150 and 350. And you look at the pending rate for those homes, that's money in the bank. If you find listings in that price point, you ought to be running to the market. right?
And we talk a lot about, knowing what price point to go after. And let's take it back to 2008 when the market is failing. And Andy had just joined me in real estate, given up a huge salary position, right? And the market is tanking. We have lenders going under left and right. And we sat down and said, okay, what market is still going to sell despite this? And that's the question that we all need to be asking ourselves right now. Where can I pivot to? Where can I shift to? So if I'm calling for sell by owners and expireds, I'm going to really pinpoint areas that have an incredibly high pending ratio, right? And so those are the ones that Andy circled there. When the market shifted in 2008, Andy, we went to investors,
first-time home buyers,
and first-time home buyers, and we mastered that. And that's what continued to drive our business and increase our business year after year, even in the worst economic housing crisis of our time. So guys, there is still business to be had. You just got to pivot and make some changes and go find it.
Yeah, and you look at on the higher end of the spectrum, over $1 million, $1 million to $1.5 million, you only have a 17% chance of going under contract. So,
and I want you guys to even look like 500, and you're going to see this in a little bit, but if you look at 500 and you go over to the month supply of listings, we know that 6 month supply is a balanced market.
Right here.
Well, guess what? Over 500 is heading towards a balanced market. And if you look at 750 and up, you are in a buyer's market. So for those clients that you have that are move-up buyers that are going to be selling their $400,000 house and buying the $800,000 house, this is a great time for them to take advantage of low interest rates and take advantage of the market on both sides. So are we having those conversations? When we're talking to people and they're saying, gosh, we're really hating our house right now. It's too small. Like, we found this out during quarantine, but I just don't want to sell during this time. Could you stop and just educate them slightly on what a move-up transaction could actually look like for them? Andy, you had this conversation last night with a past client.
Yeah, I had a past client we've sold a couple of houses for, called me to sell an investment property. Felt like it was at the tip top, was considering cashing it in. Zillow actually told him it was worth $420. It's probably worth $375, but thank you, Zillow. You actually helped me get a phone call from my database. And in the process of talking to John, I said, John, how are you and Heidi? How are y'all doing? How's your current house? And he said, well, it's funny you should ask that. We've actually considered selling that house and doing kind of a lateral move or an upgrade within our current neighborhood because our backyard just doesn't have what we want, and we need a little bit more space. So great. Sounds like we need to meet. I teed it up for Scott, and now he's got 2, maybe 3 transactions out of it. So there is a lot of free time on people's hands right now. You can actually be inserting the thoughts into people's head, and you need to be doing that. You need to be controlling the conversation with your database. So that's, to me, we look at this graph every month because it actually represents probably 10 to 12 graphs that we normally get on the quarterly stats. It's very dense. I get it. It's a lot of numbers on this thing. But I would be taking this on listing appointments. I would be showing people this. Here's what the market looks like in your price point. I think it's real valuable. All right. So now we start looking at the effects of price reductions, right? We really want to get inside of that. This is that series of graphs on the quarterly side, is what's the penalty for taking a price reduction in terms of percent sold and days on market. And this is the pain, right? This is where we actually show pain to help people price property correctly.
So right now, Andy, I know that all of you agents are hearing, well, with your active listings that are still on the market, well, my home's just not selling because of this COVID crisis. I mean, my home's not selling, and, you know, I'm sure I'll get more showings when COVID ends. We have got to debunk that myth, because we know that property that's in great condition and priced right will sell. So for all of those properties that we have on the market right now, we cannot accept COVID as the reason it's not selling. And we need to be having tough conversations with those sellers and say, look, now could be the best time to sell your home. We actually know right now that homes that are priced right and aren't taking a price reduction are still selling for 99% of the list price.
99.3.
99.3, and they're selling in 15 days.
That's that bottom line of this sheet, just so y'all know where we are.
Yeah, so if you, and this is a lot,
Right
if
here.
we were in person, we could use a pointer.
I think, can y'all see my, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
All right, good.
Good. So you see that no price reduction column. So I think this is what we have to set up in a consult. If we're going for a consult right now, we can't let people think their home's just not going to sell because of COVID. We've got to say, Mr. Seller, if you price your property correctly, in 2 weeks, we're going to know. In 15 days, we're going to know if we priced it right, because it's going to sell. And if not, we need to take a price reduction.
Well, any shift, and you know this from the shift book, right, is it exposes us. It's going to expose and separate good agents from bad agents. It's going to expose and separate good listings from bad listings. So the more data you have like this, it's, again, to control the conversation, the more you're going to win. You'll increase your conversion from appointment to client. And that's really what this is all about.
Can we look at this last line too? If you guys go all the way over where it says price reduced median days on market, I want to point out that if you get it wrong, guys, a 90-day listing agreement is not going to work. It's going to take 94 days.
On average.
On average.
Median
now,
average.
I want you to go up. So let's go up and follow it. By the way, I wore my glasses today. They're blue light glasses just to make me feel smart for staff. If we go up, see this 99 right here? This is actually 300,000. So if you miss it above 300,000, it's going to take 99 plus days to get that home sold. So I would feel really confident in my price right now if I was going to take a 90-day listing agreement. If you don't feel confident in the price, do one of two things. Take a longer listing agreement, or, which I would prefer, is build in price reductions into your listing agreement. So Mr. Seller, I know you really want to list your home at $425. My gut is telling me that your home will,
well, the data is telling me.
and the data is telling me, right?
Yeah, nothing's gut.
Yeah, the data is telling me that $400,000 is where we need to be. So let's do this. Let's take it at $425 for 2 weeks. We know that if we're going to get close to $425, it's going to happen in those first 15 days. If not,
Right here.
let's reduce it after 2 weeks to $400,000. Does that sound like a plan? And guess where I put it? In the listing agreement. That way you don't have to go back to them in 2 weeks and have the conversation. They've signed it in the listing agreement. And for your sellers that really have to sell right now, I think this is super important to do.
Yeah. Yep. And this actually, you know, you can use this graph to help you get price reductions right now. If you've got a listing that's sitting and it's been on the market for over 15 days and you haven't gotten an offer on it, you're not negotiating anything on it, I would share this graph. Just say, you know, the numbers would suggest, you could even do it by price point. The numbers are suggesting that we're not priced correctly. So use that to your
Hey, and
advantage.
can we talk about this really quick too? If you guys are really struggling and I know a lot of times we as agents go in and we say, I think it would sell at $425, you know, based on the data. Well, based on the data, sometimes we get it wrong, right? We're not going to get it right all the time. And if you're really worried about going to your seller because you're the one who told them the price, then I would take this graph and I would say, Mr. Seller, what we know right now is that 45% of all the listings on the market have taken a price reduction. And because we haven't sold in the past month, this is where we need to move next. And it's not just you, it's 45% of the market.
Misery loves company.
Yes, it does.
All right. So let's move.
Before we move forward, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, we have a couple of questions. Nicole is asking, Leslie, you used to say 10, 10, 30. What would you say it now?
Great question, Nicole. Make me think. I still think it's the same.
I still think it's 10, 10, 30. Yeah.
I still think it's the same.
What she's saying is 10 days without a showing.
Actually, I don't even think I would go 10 days without a showing
7
right
days.
now. Yeah, I would be really concerned right now if I went 7 days without a showing. Now, here's the trick, guys. If you're listing super luxury right now, you actually may go 10 days without a showing. Depending on price point and kind of looking at this, I would say anything under 500, if you didn't have a showing in a week, I would be really concerned. Because we know there's still buyers, and we're going to look at that in a minute too. Nicole, that's such a great question.
So again, just to make sure everybody understands what she's asking, typically we would say if you go 10 days without a showing, that something's wrong, right? And it's typically price or condition. Those are the two most common issues with property. And then if we went 10 showings without an offer, which means 10 people came in and turned their nose up and bought something else or went in a different direction, we just helped 10 other homes sell, that would tell you that something is wrong. And then finally, if we've gone 30 days without going under contract, then we know something's wrong. I think based upon this, you could actually say it's shorter than 30 days. I think all of those could be short.
I think all of them could. And Nicole, one thing I'm thinking, I love this question because it just made me think a little bit differently. 10 showings without an offer, that's probably typical in our normal market. Yet I want you to think with the less looky-loos out, we are going to have fewer showings on properties than we typically have. So I don't think I would go that long. If I'm you guys, I'm probably just going to go for this, these days on market right here, this no price reduction days on market, and find my price and say, okay, I have a $350,000 house on the market. Look at this. It's between 18 and 21 days. So call it 3 weeks. I'm going to know whether it's priced right or not.
I think you can also use this strategy on the buyer's agent side. So if you've got a listing that you're posturing for your buyer, ask the listing agent, hey, what's your activity like? And if you've got a real cocky agent and they say, oh, we're getting slammed, we've had like 20 showings. Wow, how many offers have you had? Well, we haven't had any offers yet. They're just telling you that the house is probably 5% overpriced.
Ding, ding, ding. Make an offer, at least 5% off the list price.
And I would cite that conversation whenever you make the offer for the buyer.
Laura, Donna, what were our other questions, girl?
Yeah, we have another one, and then I think you answered it, but I'm still going to ask it. So can you talk about listing situation where there is lots and lots of interest and showing requests on a property, but offers are coming in 5% below list? Ooh. Is it priced too high?
Yes.
Price is too high. If you have offers coming in and they're 5% below, listen to that. That's feedback, right? Good question.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's whenever that happens. I mean, we always want our sellers to get what they want, but whenever you get multiple offers and they're all coming in below list price around a given price, man, it's like hitting a dartboard. You know exactly what the value of that property is to the buyers.
What else we got, Lord?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
awesome.
I have a question. We haven't touched on the condo market yet.
We're going there next.
Coming.
How different are the things in condos?
Yeah, we're getting there.
All right, so we're not going to go into detail on the next couple of slides. These are for specific
Quick question.
areas. Yeah.
Andy, I'm sorry.
Oh.
But when we're dealing with the virtual tours, say we're doing virtual open houses on a Sunday specific or whatever date, are we using any of those as showings, quote unquote?
Well, it's harder to track. It can be.
I guess it could be. My thought has always been that I want a showing counted when an agent actually brings them through the home, because I know they're motivated to buy and they're pre-approved, right? Typically, in open houses, you just don't know their level of motivation. So I think a lot right now you're going to see with virtual tours, people are seeing things in homes that actually prevent them from actually going to see a showing. They're finding something they don't like in the virtual tour, which is what we want to do right now, right? We want to protect our sellers with the most serious buyers. And so I think that's why we get back to that conversation of we're going to see less showings right now.
It gets the looky-loos out of it.
Yeah, well,
They can look online, they can look virtually.
And we can use that to also help with showing the sellers. People have been looking online just like we did in the past.
right.
However, more so people are looking online, more are looking online and less are making appointments, which then heads into the less showings,
Exactly.
no quicker if we didn't price right. Okay, thank you.
Great question, Marian.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can edit this. You can put in your area number and it'll spit out, obviously, for each price point, important information that would be helpful if you're going on a listing appointment, because people aren't going to want to know what the averages are necessarily throughout Atlanta.
I actually like this chart, Andy, because this actually compares a specific area and price point to all areas in Metro Atlanta. And I think this can be really helpful for your clients that say, well, I've been reading Atlanta Journal-Constitution and it says blah, blah, blah about the real estate market. And if the news isn't as good for their area, this would actually be really helpful to show them. Or the news for their area could be better, right?
Yeah, are they pushing the market or are they dragging the market? Is that area?
If I was going on a listing appointment, this is the slide I would use, by the way. And it's a lot of numbers and it's really confusing. So I would have it, I would have reviewed it in advance, and I would have actually made notes of just a few things to point out on this particular slide.
Mm-hmm. And these are all, by the way, on the quarterly as well. So it's kind of nice to have them on a monthly basis. You get, I think, truer data. So same thing, again, you can enter in your area number and get specific statistics for each area.
We're going to the condo market just for you, Elena.
So again, same as your detached single family homes. If you put this in a vacuum and you looked at it, it looks pretty good. We're going to take a look at how it looks compared to April of last year, and you'll see a little bit of a different story.
I like to first look, so guys, condo market, so this is townhomes too. If you follow that pending ratio down, I just want to point out that the pending ratio in the condo market is 29%. Wait, whoa. Is this the right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I had my wrong chart looking at it. The pending in the condo market is 29%. And actually single family homes pending ratio is 36%. So the condo market is not performing as well as the single family home market. And for reasons I'm sure COVID related that you might guess, right? People are really thinking before they live in a condo building with a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to continue to watch this.
I do think that these two charts and the first two charts that we looked at, you know, all of them with the big red box at the top of them, they tend to lull you to sleep a little bit. They don't really tell you the story of what's going on because it still looks good, right? It's still, those statistics are still going to lead you to believe that we're fine, right?
Yeah, and if we look, actually, if you look at the failed listing percentage, it's down, right? Because I told you guys that we really looked, it's failed listings is typically 33%. Well, only 27%, 28 actually percent failed. So it looks better there. And that's really similar to the single family home market. And look, you've got 3 months supply, 3.2, whereas the single family home market had 2.9 months of supply. So again, like really showing similar signs to single family overall.
Just not as many units, right? Not as many actives, not as many pendings.
But wait, right? And wait, because you're going to see some data that's a little concerning coming.
Yep. All right. So again, same thing in terms of what does price reductions, what's the effect on price reductions? 36.7% of condos, active condos, have taken a price reduction.
That's actually less than the single family home market. Because if you guys remember, it was 45% of our active single family homes had taken one. So less in the condo market. And, you know, Andy, one thing that I kind of thought about this is I wonder if there's an affordability thing going on here. Like maybe less are taking price reductions because condos are more affordable. I don't know. It's interesting.
That they can't afford to take a price reduction?
Yeah. Like
could be.
I don't know.
Could be. We're gonna see the pain here in a second.
Before you click, really quick, if we look at the pending price reduced right here, 26% of all condos that are actually under contract have taken a price reduction versus single family, that was actually 33%. So it's lower. Overall, they're taking less price reductions. If you look at the pending days on market, it's actually higher though. It's taking longer to sell condos for those under contract right now. And I think that's what we need to be looking at is how many days on market for the pendings, because those are the ones that are going under contract right during this crisis, not in the past 3 months.
Yeah, and hopefully those $1.5 million+ condos are not planning on moving anytime soon. I think they're going to get stuck.
Yeah, and whereas here, no price reduction in the condo market, 19 days.
Versus 15.
And price reductions?
Very similar.
97 versus 94 median days on market if you take a price reduction.
So there's your condos, Elena. All right, again, we're not going to go into detail on all of these.
Can we look at the monthly
specifics.
Trend analysis though, because we've got like 12 minutes and we want to be respectful of your time. But I think, guys, this is where Andy and I, when we look at these every single month, I don't even go to these red charts first. If I'm going to be honest with you, this is really in a vacuum. I want to look at year over year, and that's why I immediately flip to page 11, and then I go, or page 12.
Yeah, this is actually just a recap, just so everybody understands what each category is. I think this is always good to kind of refresh, take a look at what am I looking at, right? All right, so on the detached side, we're seeing supply drop and demand drop. We have 15% lower inventory April 2020 compared to April 2019. So that's a little concerning.
Yeah. One thing I told Andy last night, and I was trying to figure this out, and I don't know that this actually translates, but I want you guys to think about this. So if we're 15% lower in actives, and we have 27% less in demand, that's a delta of about 12%. And we were struggling with that last night, but it is interesting to note, like, at some point, the lower supply and the lower demand.
Well, the demand will actually drive the price more so than the supply because you're outstripping.
Exactly.
You're not outstripping the supply.
Exactly. And that's what I meant
about that. You're building inventory.
About that 12% delta is, it's not quite as bad as it looks because the actives are lower. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Pending ratio is down about 3.6%. That is not a ton, right? But it is lower. Number of solds. Here's the interesting thing: is pendings are down, sales are up.
And that's year over year, you guys. So this is April 2020 versus April 2019. I mean,
now remember, sales happened when?
Pre-COVID. Sales happened pre-COVID. And that's what I want you guys, because this can actually lull you. Because if we look at, higher, they were 8% higher. Everything that sold in the past 3 months, only March is really what we're impacting, because the March closings, when did those go under contract? In February or January? When did the February closings go under contract? In January or December? And all of that's pre-COVID. So that's why this data is not exactly caught up
On the solds.
And I think next month and even June, we're going to see some more interesting results. And I can actually see that not being higher compared to last year.
Yeah, and on the distressed property, the main thing that we're looking at is forbearance for mortgages. I was actually talking to James Williamson with Shelter last night. We don't have the data yet. It hasn't been updated on what percentage of mortgages are in forbearance. The last one was at the end of April, and it was 7% of mortgages. And we've talked about this a couple of times. We believe that it could go as high as 20, even 25%, depending on how long this goes. So what happens in a forbearance is that you would basically not pay a mortgage or pay a reduced amount of mortgage. It's almost like a balloon payment at the end of some specified period of time. Could be 1 month, could be 2 months, 3 months, what have you. But the problem with it is that you're basically telling people who can't afford to pay their mortgage to pay what they already owe later. And there's no assurances that they're going to have that money then, right? So what happens in those scenarios, you'll probably start seeing people need to sell their house. Hopefully people have equity because of the run up in the market over the last few years, and they can sell without having to do a short sale. Short sales would obviously be pre-foreclosure. And, we had a lot of experience with that in 2009 through 2011. And if we have to go back there, there'll be a lot of new training on short sales. However, the point of this is, and really what we've got to watch is we don't necessarily want things to go into foreclosure, right? Foreclosure really starts impacting comps, starts really impacting future business. It takes us a long time to get out of a hole when we've got a lot of foreclosures.
And can we talk about this a minute? Because you guys need to know the difference between forbearance and forgiveness. And I loved in Bold on Tuesday, they talked about love generation, not lead generation. And when you're having these phone calls with your database and they're out of work, you may start getting some questions about forbearance and forgiveness. The first thing is contact your lender immediately, right? Like that's the advice you want to give them. But you also need to stay in touch with people right now, because I sadly believe that we're going to come out of this and we're going to have a lot of people who have to sell their homes. And we need to really be there for people during this time and educate them on what's going on in the market and kind of be the voice of reason.
Yeah, Gary made this point last week, and I loved it. He said, we don't own any assets as realtors. We provide a service for people, and people need us in good times and they need us in bad times. So, our future is secure as long as we continue to educate ourselves and shift to the market of the moment. And stay as much ahead of this thing as we possibly can. So kudos to all of you guys for learning more about the market. Now I want to ask yourself, based upon this knowledge that I have, what do I need to go do, right? Get into action. I mentioned this earlier, but I think median original list price is 300,000 is probably the tip top of the market. I would be shocked if we're looking at this thing, maybe not in May, or in June, but in July, if that number is not lower.
And I even said this as we were talking last night when we were really digging into this, is guys, jumbo loans are just drying up. Like there are a lot of lenders right now that cannot do jumbo financing. So if anything, like I think we're really going to be watching this, because this median original list price, because I think you're going to have a lot of people not able to afford higher priced homes because they were relying on jumbo money that they can't get anymore. And then also with job uncertainty, people are probably going to scale back their price point. So I think we're going to see those two things happen. We're going to start seeing people be a little more reserved with their price point, and then jumbo money. So I'm sure we'll hear more of that.
Yeah. So let's look at the condos really quick. Condos is a little bit of a different story. remember in the detached, we're looking at supply was down and demand was down. Well, in condos, we're looking at supply is up and demand is down. That is not a good recipe, right?
A train's coming.
Yeah, and this is, we always see condos kind of get hit first. And I think when we were in downturns, you know, there was severe opportunities on this side, but a good buyer's agent would let people know this, right? That your best long-term investment is always going to be detached property. Condos and townhomes, that's going to be a lifestyle decision, and you're just going to have to realize that you know you're probably going to be the first to feel pain.
And it's and condos, we also watch luxury. So the two markets that shift first are luxury and condos. And what are we watching right now shift first? Luxury and condos. Luxury, we're already in a buyer's market, and here we go. Condos, I mean, this is the first month. It'll be interesting to see next month. But I mean, higher 11% more listings. And I think that's completely COVID related. And then people aren't buying condos like they were, right? I mean, 30% lower supply. Like, we really need to watch it right here. And if I have buyers that I'm showing in the condo market right now, guys, I'm going to make sure that they're going to be there for 5 years.
At least. At
least, because we know that shifts typically happen every 7 years, and I want to protect these people. So if you've got a young person, young college kid getting out of college, buying a condo, like, don't sell a condo to them if they tell you that they're just going to be in Atlanta for 2 years. Like, we need to be good stewards right now.
That'll earn you
and always
more business in the future.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. So the same thing applies here. We're going to be watching the distressed property. We're not seeing that show up yet. Hopefully we don't see that show up. It's all going to depend on how lenders and mortgage servicers are, you know, going to respond, and how forgivable and flexible they're going to be with their customers.
I know we only have 2 minutes, but let's just pop back up to the number of sold, just to point out again, guys, it looks better. It says it's a higher, that we sold 13% more condos, but I want you to keep in mind that that was the previous 3 months. So most of those were sold pre-COVID.
Fool's gold.
Yeah. So don't let that lull you.
Yeah. Starting to take longer days on market, 25% higher days on market compared to this time last year. That's pretty significant, y'all. I mean, 39, we look at 39 again in a vacuum, we say, well, it's not all that bad. But when you compare it to the way it was, that is a big, big red flag.
Yeah.
So people that are listing condos, I would make sure that you're pricing ahead of the market. I would prepare the seller that if we don't take advantage of the market where it is right now, it could be a long, slippery slope. Right?
And we've got to price it right too, because there's more competition. Remember, there's 11% more condos coming on the market every month, or 11% more came on the market this month.
I think
so more competition, pricing is going to be important.
I think the smart agent looks at this and says, all right, who do I have in my database that has a condo that might need to sell in the next 2-3 years?
You're going to do it on a career night, right? At 6? Oh, it's at 5. Okay. It's going to be virtual. It's going to
trying to realize what that is.
Sweet Melody.
Yeah. So, but you're looking at your database and you're making conscious efforts to go to your people that have condos and just ask them, hey, you know, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the condo market. I'm reaching out to all my clients, my past clients that bought condos, and I want to know, like, what's your plan? Like, how long do you intend to stay in this property? And if the answer is a year, 2 years, 3 years, I would say, well, do you mind if I kind of educate you on what's going on? Because I think this could be an opportunity for you. And say, great, sounds like we need to meet, right? Set up appointments with these people and educate them quickly in the next 30 days.
Could you, Andy, can I ask a question real quick, please?
Yeah.
Could you flip the script and look for the wealth building client and say, looking for those people that want to build wealth with no HOA, maybe want to, you know, fix and hold? Is now the time to start talking to them and getting them ready to go to possibly purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you'll see I don't think you'll see real hard hit effects of this for probably another,
90 days.
3 to 6 months.
I think we're going to start seeing it when that forbearance is called due. So, I mean, I think you're looking at people went into forbearance in March. I mean, you're looking at 90 days from there.
And the forbearance affects single family just like it affects condo. If I was an institutional investor or somebody that, was really into investing in real estate, I would be pooling cash right now, and I probably wouldn't be looking at condos for my first opportunity. I'd be looking at single family homes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nicole. Laura, Donna, what kinds of questions we got, girl?
We have a few questions. So number one, would the advice about 5 years also pertain to townhouses?
Yes, absolutely. Condos and townhomes.
They get affected virtually the same way.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Do you think short sales will be the new thing?
That's hard to say. And Andy, I'd like your opinion on this, but
Well, they'll be before foreclosures.
Yeah, I think we have so many people right now with equity in their homes because of rising prices. It'll be interesting to see. I think they will come back. It's a matter of time. I don't think we're necessarily going to look next month and see short sales pop up, or even this summer. I mean, I think if
It'll
we
be
see
next year.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it more next year.
Mm-hmm. But hopefully we see a rise in short sales before we see a rise in foreclosures.
For sure.
Now would be a good time for you to brush up on your short sale education.
Yeah. Nicole is also asking, do we give data what it was during 2008 or 2011 on forbearance?
I don't understand the question.
She said, is there data on forbearance from 2008? I don't even remember
There was no forbearance in 2008.
being an option.
Nope.
Good. I am so glad you were saying that.
That was zero forbearance in 2008.
There was.
Yeah, they were pretty, they were rather tough to say the least, and many of them lost their shirts because of it. And it seemed that we had learned a lesson when they came out and said forbearance this time, but they didn't explain forbearance correctly.
Right.
And folks heard the first thing.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. We've got to be the educators, and we've got to make sure that they understand what forbearance means.
Yeah, it's not forgiveness. The bell will ring for them, and unfortunately it's going to ring far faster than most people can handle it. Then there's another decision that has to be made for that homeowner. So this just breaks it down by price point. Again, looking at April 2019 versus 20. And you can kind of see like it's affecting every price point right now.
And there's a condo slide for this as well.
Yep. Yeah. And on the other columns there related to sales, which we've already kind of beat that dead horse, January through March means nothing. It really is kind of useless data for us. I think that's probably got most of it because the rest of these days on market and that sort of thing. What other questions do we have? I know we're a little bit over our hour.
There are no other questions in the chat, but if you have any other questions that you would like to address, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I do have a question. Can we have a class on short sales, please?
Yeah.
So Andy, in the downturn, we started doing short sales in the last downturn, and Andy has his CDPE license. So that's probably designation. So that's probably something that you're going to see. And that was offered through our local board. So you're going to look through your probably local realtor association because it's actually a designation.
So I have to add something to that. David Strauss with O'Kelly and Sorohan has that designation, and I'll call him after this class and try to schedule something for the GLG.
Oh, Laura, Donna, you're amazing.
This is Catherine with O'Kelly, and I was just going to say we can absolutely get out there and teach something for you guys, and that's not a problem. So get with us, and we will absolutely get that on the books right away.
Love it. Thank you,
That's
Catherine.
awesome.
Thank you. And
In
let's all
addition-
hope and pray that Bank of America perfected their process.
Yes, and in addition to that, on Monday, we have the tactic talking about REOs, foreclosures, short sales on the Shift Book Club. So it's going to be on Monday at 4:00. Hop on that call too. Gina is going to do that one.
Yeah, that's great. So the cover of the book, Shift, it's not about the market, it's about what you do. You just got equipped today with a lot of stats and hopefully a lot of ideas and conversations. The question now is, what are you going to do with it? Think like an agent in a seasonal market. Obviously drive as much business now as you can and tee up as much business as you can for those who aren't comfortable with listing at the moment. I think the real key, though, to winning right now is just going head first with a plan. Make sure your clients, your database understand that you have a plan for tackling this situation that we find ourselves in. Remember, a setback is just a setup for a comeback. So what's your comeback look like?